Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partners through Done-For-You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. For years, Jeannette Goldman has been helping people pursue their dreams of owning their own business. She is a restaurant consultant and a provider of e-learning courses for first-time restaurant entrepreneurs. She's the founder of StartYourRestaurantBusiness.com and has started several businesses during her career, including cafes, catering businesses, a retail store, and a multimedia company, which she still currently owns. Jeannette offers in-depth expertise in starting restaurants and is the author of Restaurant Startup Resources, How-To Guides, and a 7-step success plan. Jeannette, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
So, since restaurants are our primary focus, I will go right to the most pressing question. With COVID still a big factor in our lives, is now the time to start your own restaurant business?
Absolutely. People always say that, there's never a right time, or a wrong time, I feel. If you have your ducks in a row and you're very passionate, things can happen. And, at first, a lot of, people were saying to me, are you worried with COVID? Are and right after that, I got a couple from Houston who purchased my 7-step program. So I sort of felt like, well, if somebody's, out there, I guess it's not a bad time to start, But I think the greatest thing about, having this pandemic is that there's so many people, that are exiting the restaurant business. And there are a lot of possibilities for those who want to get into the business. There's places now that are fully equipped. There's, rents you can negotiate a lot more. I mean, I think the biggest thing is you have to start off with thinking about to-goes. That's going to be that's the biggest thing people are going to want to, eat. They're going to find places where they can get food. They may not be able to go in and sit down and relax, but we live a very busy, fast-paced life. So, I'm a big believer on, I got into the industry kind of an interesting way. I was working for a restaurant that had a catering business in it, and also a high-end, like a white tablecloth, and they had a nice bar. It was really sharp, and it had a really cool theme, but I saw all the different aspects that were going on, and I like the idea of delivering and bringing food to businesses or to homes. It was kind of like an interesting concept for me. So I got a real view of what it's like to serve and bring food to people.
Sure. You've been a startup, kind of a restaurant startup consultant for years now. Has the advice that you've given people changed over the last 18 months?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I actually just put out a free resource, how to start, how to start a restaurant during the pandemic, which is a to-go business, and I think that's the biggest thing, because it's like a testing ground, because eventually you're going to want to have a sit-down restaurant, unless you really dig doing to-go business, the drive up and you bring it out to them, that kind of thing. So, I mean, that has changed a lot. And I'm currently working with some people, and they've gone from, should they do a food truck? Should they go to brick and mortar? And they've been teetering, and I've been trying to guide them, onto what's going to work best for them where they're located. And yeah, I mean, it has changed in the last 18 months for sure.
As I mentioned in your introduction, you've owned a variety of businesses, cafes and catering companies. What led you to become a restaurant startup consultant?
It's a really interesting story. A person that worked for me, a right-hand person, she was the teacher that was kind of disillusioned with teaching, and a friend of hers knew that I was looking for somebody, and she called me up one day, and we hired her at this business that I had, this catering business, and she worked for me for a couple of years, at least 3, and we sold the business, and she was sold along with it. So, and she called me up about 7 years ago and said, "Hey, Jeannette, I'm really thinking about opening my own place. Would you help me out?" And that's really where it all started, because I did everything with her from start to finish. I helped her find a location. I helped her purchase equipment. I helped her cost out her menu. I did all those things, and it kind of brought me back to like, wow, I don't want to own one, but this is the next best thing to, helping someone else. And so I just, I took down a lot of notes, and I went through a lot of different things with her, and I decided, wow, the startup is so, so important. And I'm proud to say that she was able to run it for a couple of years herself and sold it and moved up to North Carolina to pursue more of being in the food industry. So
as you helped her with these individual things, were these things that you had already done and it was just kind of like muscle memory, or did you have these like systems down?
It was a combination of both. I had some of these systems down because I had opened 4 food businesses. So but the systematic things, what you should do first, what you should do second, what you should do third. That helping her helped me create my course, basically. So yeah, muscle and, systematically trying to take those 2 and turn them into something that could help startups.
Tell me a little bit about your path to the restaurant business as a young adult. I know you didn't start out as a restaurateur or even in restaurants. Tell me a little bit about that and how you got started in restaurants.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing. And on my site, I do tell the story of how I came about being, in the food business. But yeah, I was a typical person, a teenager graduating from high school. What am I going to do next? I was fortunate to get certified as a dental technician. When I was in 11th and 12th grade, I went to P-Tech, which was a pretty cool thing. And the industry I liked using my hands because I'm very artistic in that way. But as I got into that industry, I realized, wow, this is not for me. I took a break, went to college for a couple of years. And then, I realized I really don't want to be a dental technician. So I just started looking through the wanted ads, and I came across an ad on Long Island for a deli. No experience necessary. And so I said, what the heck, I'm just going to go for it. So I applied and I got the job right on the spot, and it was a German deli. It was a family owned business. The parents came from Germany and opened it, and then their sons inherited it. And I was working there for about 3 months before they let me know the recipes, because everything was in German. And so once they found me, that I actually proved to myself that I could have no experience and they could train me. They let me in on all the recipes. So I got them in English so I could create, and I learned how to make soups and stocks and everything from scratch. Back in the day, there was no, your roast beef was cooked off. It didn't come in from, some company. Your turkey breast whole turkeys were cooked. They were turned into, cold cuts and then into a soup. So it was a great introduction to the food industry for me. I couldn't afford to go to culinary school, and this was the next best thing. And I gained a lot of experience and knowledge, and it allowed me to move on to learning more about the industry. So I wound up getting another job at a chain to learn a little bit more about how things work. It was Houlihan's that it was like sort of like a Fridays. So I was working at the deli in the morning, and I was working at Houlihan's at night. And I loved everything about it.
So you learned, as a deli employee, what was kind of were you just a an employee and you did it all, customer service, you prepared food, you did everything.
I was in the back of the kitchen.
Okay.
Once in a while, I'd slide up front because they'd like to see who's cooking,
Uh-huh.
So, but most of it was, you had we started with breakfast in the morning, and then we moved on to lunch. And, we were making things like in large quantities, it wasn't coming in already prepared, all the salads, all the hot entrees, everything was made from scratch. It was, like I said, it was probably one of the best experiences I could ever have, it not being able to go to culinary school. But the next step after both working at the deli and then working at Houlihan's with that amount of experience, I was able to get a really neat job at a country club in Manhattan. It was a very interesting experience for me because I actually got to work with European chefs, and it was a state-of-the-art kind of a place. It had a white tablecloth, it had a bar and grill, and then it also had a workout and gym inside it. And a lot of famous people would go there where it was located. It was kind of a club that had clubs all over the United States, so members could go to different clubs. And so I got to work in the main kitchen dining area. And then I also worked in that health club where I was creating, healthy dishes. It was sort of like a organic cafe type of thing. And it was it was kind of ahead of its time type of place. I kept walking into these really new and insightful things because it was new, they took chances with me. And it was probably one of the best experiences. I learned how to cut meat. I learned how to bake. It was just an all-around experience. And the chefs that I worked with were very open-minded to somebody that didn't have a culinary degree, let's put it that way. So I felt very fortunate. And I knew that I wanted to open up, something of my own at one point. So
how many other places? So you really had a multifaceted journey with the deli, the chain restaurant Houlihan's, and then the club with European chefs. How many other places, or did you work anywhere else before deciding to open up your own place?
Yes, I moved from New York to Western New York, and I took a job at a private club up there, the Genesee Valley Club, and because of having my experience at the club that I worked in Manhattan, it was a really, again, I walked into a chef who actually was a part of the Olympics, Food Olympics. He was fabulous, a young guy too, actually, which was pretty cool because a lot of the chefs I've worked with were a little bit older. I worked with a Belgian chef, a chef from England. So Frank, this gentleman that I worked with at the Genesee Valley Club, was fairly young and very talented, and I got to do a lot of different things that I wasn't able to do at the other club, and I learned how to make pasta. I learned more about baking, and it was a state-of-the-art kind of a place. The kitchen had gotten caught on fire, so they had all this beautiful new equipment. You could cook like 100 lobsters off at one time, these steamers, and the kitchens were where you could just clean. They were like, you could clean them down with a hose, and it was amazing to see a kitchen like that. I just felt so fortunate to just keep running into these situations where I was working with state-of-the-art stuff, things that, kitchens were not all kitchens had, restaurant kitchens, industrial kitchens. So I felt, and after a while I was working a lot of nights, and it was wearing, and I decided to apply for a job at Oscars, which is where I ran into one of the best, probably owners in the restaurant industry. He just allowed me to take over the catering department, and I took everything I had, all the experience I had, and brought it to him. It was like a New York style kind of place. It had a catering department, a restaurant, a bar and grill, and the theme was Oscars, the movie theme, and so a lot of people who were doing anything on Broadway, they had a theater there, the Eastman Theater, and I got to meet some really famous people. I got to go into David Copperfield's hotel room and set up dinner for him there, and then I got a chance to set up dinner for him at the Eastman Theater where he performed that night. So I really enjoyed working at Oscars. It was that's really where the spark hit me, that I really wanted to own something of my own, and And my first business kind of was because of that. I really felt like I could do this now. I could do this for myself,
It's one thing to think that it's one thing to have a lot of experience and be confident in your abilities to fulfill the responsibilities of that business. But I would think in the restaurant industry, there must have been a moment where you were like, I'm pretty good at making this food. Did you ever have that moment where you realized like people would rather eat my food than other people's food?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, because you realize too that I'm putting in, and you put in a lot of hours, working in the industry. You work a lot of holidays. You do, you know what I mean? And you start to not have a life, a personal life. So it's sort of like, well, if I'm going to do this for someone else, I might as well do it for myself, So that kind of, was what pushed me to influence me to do it for, to get a restaurant of my own,
So how did you get started as an owner?
Well, I was very fortunate. My sister was like my silent partner, and I opened up in a facility. I opened up in a place that was once a pizza place and a bakery kind of thing. And it had all the equipment was in there, and the gentleman was looking to get out of the business. So he offered a very sweet deal, and my sister helped finance it for me. And I was there about almost 2 years. We were there, and again, this was like one of those lessons that you learn. There were things that I didn't realize I didn't know. So it was unfortunate, but I had to close the business, and it really was upsetting to me. You realize mistakes that you make, and it's all during that startup phase, and I realized, well, this was a pizza place, and I was doing something completely different. So the neighborhood was sort of like not very warm. They weren't very welcoming, even though the food was good. They were like, well, what happened to the pizza? What happened to the bakery? And I was doing, sandwiches, and I was doing hot dinners at night, but, it just wasn't what that neighborhood wanted. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize that right away, but, I looked around when I was leaving it, and I realized, look at all these pizza ovens that I wasn't really utilizing. I was just, I was cooking things in them, but I wasn't cooking pizza in them, So that was my first, I wouldn't say it was a failure. It was just a hard lesson.
Sure. That kind of leads me into my next question. So this one was kind of maybe, I don't know, not recognizing the market fully, maybe when you were entering into it. Were there any other maybe surprising challenges? I'm sure you learned a multitude of lessons during that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is something that I have really realized that I really want to create another resource, because I'm thinking about, that's a great question, because I realize that hiring people is a very important aspect. And when you do start a business, you can't just say, I just need a warm body. You know what I mean? You've got to have somebody that believes in what you're trying to accomplish. And even if they don't have a lot of experience, you want to see that there's a passion to learn and a respect. And I learned a lot about how important it is, to hire people. And in order to know who you have to hire, you have to know what type of concept you're going to have, so you can actually plan through it and know, I need a person with this kind of experience. I don't need a person with that experience, So that was another lesson, about it, besides the location and marketing, I had some difficulty with employees. Let's put it that way. That, it was probably because of my lack of knowing how to interview, that type of stuff. So again, another lesson to bring to the next venture,
Sure. Are these common surprises, hiring people? Are these common things that people are surprised by if they're a restaurant entrepreneur?
Well, it is common, but I think you have to have a personality. And I didn't feel like I failed as a manager or as an owner because I didn't really know what I was looking for. I feel like there's people that have personalities that are meant to manage people, and then there's people that should not be managing people. And I felt like I could manage people. I didn't fear that. But when I sold one of my businesses, the person that took it over had a very rough personality. And I was amazed at how quickly she was firing people and just had I don't think she was management material. She was a fabulous chef, don't get me wrong, but I saw where, wow, you've really got to know how to communicate with people, in general. But the food business is very grueling. And if you're expecting them to stand on their feet for 8 hours a day, possibly with a 30-minute break, you got to be nice to them. You just have to be. And I think that's what I think a lot of, besides not really knowing how to interview people and learning that, what you have to do during the interviewing process, you really have to have the personality. You have to accept the fact that if you can't manage people, you better get somebody else to do it.
So there's really a lot more probably than people realize that they're getting into, besides the fact that, maybe most people who enter into purchase or start their own restaurant probably consider themselves to be a fantastic chef with great ideas regarding food, but there's so much more to it.
Oh.
You've owned so you had your starting experience where you had to get out of that initial restaurant after a couple of years, and then you've moved on, and now I believe you've owned 4 businesses in the food industry.
Right, including the one that failed, because I guess consider that as,
So 3 other ones since then.
3 other ones, yes.
What were the positives what's given you the most traction and the most results?
Well, that's a good question. The last business I owned kind of was like, it kind of, the road took me there. And I always felt like I wanted to give the working people, not just the blue collar people, but the shirts and ties, I call them. A lot of businesses were doing workshops and courses and different things like that. So I wanted to bring food to people that they would get like almost at a restaurant. You know what I mean? Sometimes healthy, sometimes not so healthy, but they could have it at their desk or at their conference table, something that they wouldn't expect, unless they were in a restaurant. So that kind of, I did the one business I had was called Elizabeth Ann's, and it was a catering business. And I actually went into mansions in Rochester, and I worked with different organizations that would have these monthly meetings. And some of the places had their own china in it. I mean, you just used their facility. We just brought the food in and did the cooking. And I started to realize how important, it is to feed people that are, they're creating great organizations and they want to help others. And I felt like this is a perfect match. I want to feed people that are doing good things for people. So Elizabeth Ann brought me to some different organizations, Catholic organizations, different types of benefits for things, and then I got really into feeding organic foods to people. So I started something called, I started working and doing stuff for rehab centers, drug representatives that wanted to bring food into the doctor's offices and stuff like that. And that was called Alternative Gourmet. And I really zoned in on my recipes. I wanted to feed people stuff, but I wanted to reduce the caloric value and add organic stuff. So that took me into that, and then it's really interesting, the corporate catering, which I consider, it really has, that was what led me into being able to sell a business because it was viable. It had employees, and I was really ready for a change, and so when I sold that business, I felt I was leaving a family member behind. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a great opportunity for me to sell it, and everything worked out just the way it needed to work out and got me to where I am now in the multimedia business. But as I backtrack, I think about, while I was here at this multimedia business, it allowed me free time to really think about the industry. And then when an old employee of mine called me and said, I would like to open a cafe, would you please help me? And because of the business I'm in now, it allowed me to have that time to do that. So that was about 7 years ago. And that really started me on this whole, how can I help people start businesses? I really enjoyed helping her start her business. I watched her, I was there for about a year off and on with giving her advice from start to finish. And it was just a great experience, extremely rewarding.
You talked about some of the challenges. You said the food business is pretty grueling. Why do you want to help people start restaurants?
Well, we all love to go out to eat. I love to go out to eat. I mean, to bring the negativity, because a lot of my friends would say that to me. Why are you getting back into that, doing that? Isn't that, I'm like, but it was a love. I loved it. I was passionate about it. I want to help other people, continue that passion. I don't want to, turn people and have them feel like the food business is negative because of the failure rate, and I began to realize, having failed once, I know that feeling, but if I could prevent people from going through that and have a successful business, and lead them in entrepreneurship, what better way to, as I say, ride out into the sunset? Because people say to me, you're doing this. I go, yeah, I really feel like this is going to be my final, frontier, so to speak, helping people start restaurants.
So you talked about how you consider yourself to have failed once. If you could be the consultant you are now and talk to you then, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself when you were just starting out?
I guess the biggest advice would be, really know what cuisine you are really wanting to, sell, or cuisine, so to speak. What a lot of people say, oh, it's location. And I have to laugh at that, because how can you even think about locating a business if you don't even know if there's people out there wanting the food that you're going to serve? You just don't. So, you really need to figure out what cuisines you want to serve, what kind of menu you want to serve, whether, it's going to be a menu that is fast food, or is it going to be fine dining? Your cuisine really leads you every step of the way, making major decisions, from location to employees to equipment.
Sure. How important is, I guess, being seen, like marketing?
Being seen, meaning
just having awareness of your restaurant.
For people to be aware of it, or
for customers to be aware of, like, how important is getting your message out there, making your restaurant known?
Well, it's the old-fashioned way I always say, the only way to get out there is to walk the beat. Take people, things that you cook or you bake, walk in with your menu. Hi, I'm new to the neighborhood. We'd love for you to get taste test, and we'd love for you to, we'd love your feedback. And that's exactly what I've done before. I know that sounds strange, but I would have someone or hire someone, or I've had partners in different businesses, and that was, somebody worked the front of the house, so to speak, where you got to get out there and you got to let people know you're there. And it's an old-fashioned way, but bringing samples always really helped, and with the samples, we would bring our menus, our references, places and people that we've dealt with. It was, nobody refuses food, if it's free. So
that sounds like a great idea. Usually you'd hear people talk about social media or things like that, but you're saying, get it out there.
You have to do everything. Let's face it, today, preparing for your grand opening is a process. So, you have to know, you have to be aware of what's happening. Like I said, once you know the cuisine, once you found your target market, and once you know where you're locating, then the social media can start. You can go from both ends, introducing yourself or introducing some of your staff, but at the same time, being sure that you're on all the places that you need to be on social media. I mean, I often, tell people, take really great pictures. Make sure when I'm always looking at menus on the internet, and I'm always looking at pictures that they have and their reviews and stuff like that. So obviously social media is the way to roll right now. But I just say to people, you got to hit all the different facets. And my resources, I go over, how to find the magazines or how to find the what's happening, events that are happening around town, so you can get on calendars and offer different things. When there's certain types of events going on, wine tasting or different things like that in the area, or music or stuff like that, see what type of clientele that is and market your business to those types of people. If they're, looking for a place to pop in to grab some sandwiches to take to a ball game or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, social media without a doubt, is, you have to, there's no way getting around it. So
your website is startyourrestaurantbusiness.com, and you mentioned that you offer several resources. You mind if we go through a few of those?
Sure.
I saw the food truck blueprint, and that's free. Yeah. What does that do for people?
Well, it kind of gives people, I say this, my resources are going to either get people excited about being in this business, or they're going to put their sneakers on and run as far away from it. So I was working with someone who had a food truck, and they wanted to go from the food truck to a brick and mortar. So I was like, okay, slow it down. Tell me a little bit about your food truck, because that was my first really hands-on experience with it. And I realized, how important you could start reasonably to test the ground to see if your food truck is something that it could take off before you enter the brick and mortar realm. So I just, I've had some people call me about that. So that's one of the reasons why I created that resource. So it's just a basic idea of, the things that you need to think about when you're wanting to do a food truck, and do this, read this before you even look at trucks, slow it down, be aware of what you need. You're working in a very small space. Everything has to be easy and accessible. It's got to be a menu that 1 to 2 people, because you can't really have too many people in a food truck. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of commissary kitchens that you can't do a lot. There's certain things you can't do in your truck, but there's certain things you can, so as far as health codes. So it just gives people an idea of what it's going to take to run a food truck.
You also offer a free guide regarding off-premise restaurants. What is an off-premise restaurant?
It's where there's no seating. You might have a table or two for people that are waiting, but it's basically either they come out and give it to you at your car, or curbside, as they say, or you just go in and you get it, or you deliver it to them. And I because of COVID, I was utilizing places like that myself. So I realized, wow, this is a good time for people to think about doing something. It's similar to a food truck. It's not going to be as much of an investment. You don't need as much space depending on your menu. And it gives people an opportunity to say, well, maybe this is a good place for me to start. I could test my menu out, see what people like, what they don't like. We're in a, hurry up, I got to get things quick kind of thing. So this is a great way, to get your feet wet, I feel, in the industry.
You have some other resources that aren't free. I believe that you have a 7-step process, and they provide valuable insights and take people through the process of developing a cuisine, finding customers, developing a menu. Are there any parts of these steps where the average person might not recognize what goes into that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the reasons why, like I said, whether it's a free resource or it's my paid course, like I said, it's going to either make you excited about being in the industry, or it's going to make you say, not so much. I think I better try something else. And that's a good thing. I mean, before people make major investments, you might as well see what it's going to take. In each step, I offer a worksheet. I offer an hour phone call with me. It's like I feel like I'm holding their hand. I wish somebody would have done that for me, like I did it for the person that was my right-hand person, and I helped her open her cafe. I mean, I I don't know if she would have been successful if had she not had my experience. She might have been, she might not have been, but I think, because of all the things that we did together and how I worked with her and her personality, I could see where, whether it was me or someone else, she needed that guidance, even though, again, very good chef, and we'll take that away from her, even a good personality. But I could see where certain things where people need to understand certain aspects of the industry and how to handle certain situations. And knowing those things in the beginning gives you so much more, insight, instead of like, oh my God, how do I get out of this? What can I do to make this better? The steps go through things that could go wrong. And, and this is why you need to do this course before you really go and invest your life savings or have investors with you. People are very easily swayed when they eat someone's food and they go, oh my God, this person is a great cook. There's no way they could fail. Well, it's just not just about the food,
Which step is most often overlooked? The process of finding customers, maybe narrowing down your cuisine, developing your menu?
Well, I think it's very hard to say, because I offer what I call an assessment before they, approach the course. It's I demand that they take the assessment because they find out things that they're good at and things that they're not good at, natural skills that they have, learned skills that they have, and how they can utilize themselves in their business. So they know right off the bat, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. So the assessment's kind of an interesting, resource, and it's free too if somebody wants to. It's not, but I recommend that they take that first. It's really hard to say, but I really do believe that you really need to know what your cuisine is, and you've got to know that there's people that want it.
Yes.
And there's ways to find that out. But I mean, there's no point in, I look at it like, I took over a building that was a pizza place, right? I didn't offer pizza. People knew that there was pizza there for, I don't know how many years, so when the newbie walked in and there was no pizza, it was sort of like, you'd think that would be something, I would have noticed right away, but I didn't, I mean, I just, not until afterwards, it was like, wow, that aha moment,
Yeah, you moved on from that, and now, as you look back on your journey as a restaurant owner, is there a moment that you're really particularly proud of, like a period of time, maybe a snapshot in time where you're like, yeah, I'm really proud of that?
Well, I think it's just the getting reference letters, seeing how people reacted to our events that we would do, or catering that we would do, or just, even a simple person. I had this person call me up, and I made this sweet and sour cabbage soup, and the person called me up and goes, oh my God, my grandmother used to make this soup. And, and it was like, she never thought after her grandmother was gone, she'd ever see somebody or have an opportunity to have this soup again. I mean, it's little things like that that just light you up. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but when you deal with a lot of companies and corporate, when you're feeding corporations and stuff like that, the person that does the ordering and everything is sort of like the dog at the end of the day. If something goes wrong there, and we got some really nice letters from people, saying, you're so reliable. You know what I mean? I know everything is going to be there on time. Another thing, with that kind of stuff, or, those types of things, it just, they add up. There's not like one thing. It's just, a lot of different things throughout my career.
So, and you have other entrepreneurial endeavors now, including one that you currently own. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you got into that, and how maybe restaurants played a factor in you moving into that?
Well, definitely when I was able to sell the last business I owned for a substantial amount of money, that really helped. It gave me an opportunity to actually say, what do I want to do next? We were going through a situation where it was sort of like you either grow or you don't. You either grow, hire more people, get bigger. And that was where it was sort of like, I don't think I want to go any bigger than I am right now. And I really felt like I don't want to really. I want to go back to the music because it was something that was one of my first loves. Food and music have always been played major roles, and they still do, obviously. So when I sold the business, I was like, if not for the food business, I wouldn't have been able to get back into the music business, the multimedia business that I'm in right now. So I'm an entrepreneur. I have entrepreneur blood in me. I can't help myself. It's just the way it is. And I'm in a situation right now where I help individuals, musicians, songwriters. We customize our services around helping original songwriters. So I'm back again, helping people make their dreams come true. So,
Very nice. Very, very nice. One last question for you. We're big fans of gratitude on the podcast, and we'd like to let you publicly acknowledge people who have been influential for you. Who is somebody or some people in the industry that you respect and look to for advice and that you've learned from?
Well, I have to say one of the biggest influences was a gentleman named Bill Petzos. He's still in the industry himself. I think he did some stuff with a burger company that's franchising right now, but he owned that business Oscars that I was in, that where he gave me the opportunity to I was one of the first women chefs to place orders. People were surprised to see a woman in the kitchen come out and place orders for it's just at the time period that I was working there, and the amount of responsibilities I had was pretty intense. It was unusual to see a woman come out of the kitchen. So I'd have to say he really, he was a great manager, good with people, good work ethic. He let me have the company van. That was type of some of the benefits I had working there and different things like that. But what happened was I left there to open up my own business. And when that business wasn't successful, and I had to take a few steps back and go back to work to save up some money because I wanted to do it again, but I wanted to be ready. He actually sought me out to find out where I was, and he rehired me. And I worked there, and it allowed me to take the move to Florida from Rochester, New York to Florida. So Bill Petzos is definitely somebody that, really was a great mentor.
That's great. That's great. Hey, I really appreciate your time, Jeannette. Where can people find out more about you and all those things that you have to offer?
Well, just going to start your restaurant business is a great place to start. And there's information on what I'm doing now too, in different ways. And just letting people know I have some really great free resources to really take advantage of. I say this all the time. There's a ton of books that tell you how to run a restaurant, but there's very few that spend a lot of time on how to start one.
Sure. That's great advice. Hey, thanks so much for your time, Jeannette. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad. I really appreciate it as well.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.